Welcome to Montessori 101, a live show from Child of the Redwoods, all about the magic of Montessori. We believe that every child deserves a Montessori education. I'm Aubrey Hargis.
And I'm David Hargis. So whether you're live with us, hello out there, or you're watching the replay, or maybe you're catching this as a podcast, doesn't matter. We're just happy to have you here. If you want to learn more about us and our work, head over to our website, childoftheredwoods.com.
Yes, so today we are discussing unschooling. So if you're a Montessorian, you might be thinking, what does that have to do with Montessori? And if you're an unschooler, you might be thinking, I'm already an unschooler. Why do I need Montessori? So, people tend to choose different methods of education when they choose to homeschool, especially. Unschooling was born of homeschooling. So we'll get into all of that during this session. And you can decide if you too want to be a Montessori unschooler.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're also going to be spotlighting one of our community members, Valerie. And I think you'll really enjoy hearing a day in the life of Valeria, sorry.
Yes.
Valeria. And I think you'll really enjoy hearing a day in the life of one of an actual practicing Montessori homeschooler.
Mm-hmm. All right. So
unschool Montessori.
An unschooling Montessorian.
That's right.
Who is also homeschooling. Yeah. So let's go ahead and meet Valeria in this little interview. So Valeria is a mom of two living in Italy. She has two children, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. She's been at Child of the Redwoods with us for many, many years. Actually, she's enrolled in all 3 of our core programs. Yep. She's taken the fundamentals course for the Homeschool Redwoods primary. And she's also taken her child got old enough for her oldest so that she could take the lower elementary course as well. That's right. And she has been a member of Constellation, our community that focuses on thematic curriculum. And of these programs, Valeria has this to say. She says, I really like the challenges that introduce the themes of the lower elementary program. Those are really fun. She says, I like the coaching sessions, which bring me new food for thought. I have to say that when I do those coaching sessions, it's really not just about me talking.
No, they're really interactive.
It's an active community, and our course members tend to get to know each other in the community, and they just bring this brilliance to our live coaching sessions.
Yeah,
it's just like getting all of these amazing people from all around the world together to share their wisdom. And it is so strong. It's really, really powerful in those coaching sessions. She says, I love Constellation and how it is organized. And this is why Constellation is great for families who are looking for a little bit more structure as well, like support in that part. She said the 4-week program of activities, and she's talking about our pacing guide. And for those of you watching live on YouTube, we'll show you a little copy of that. So there's our 4-week pacing guide. It is not a ton of activities. It is just enough activities and projects. Really, they're like projects meant to be repeated and worked on throughout the week. So just enough to like really get that curiosity flowing so that you start doing deeper research, but not so much that you're like, okay, what are all these supplies that I need for
and this
today?
Is, as we'll
how
talk
about tomorrow?
This is how it becomes sort of a balance. This is how an unschool mindset or approach can fit to this.
Absolutely. Yes. She also loved our list of books. We always have a recommended book list.
That's right.
And she said her favorite part, you can show the book list if you have a chance real fast.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Everything.
And this is from our last theme, which was dive.
Yeah. And she says her absolute favorite part of Constellation is that the book list is great and the pacing guide is great. But what she loves the most, she says, above all, what she really loves is how to scaffold the activities according to age. So at the end of every single lesson, you've got one right there, right?
Yeah. So here's a lesson example. This one is on. This is about classifying cetaceans, and so step by step how to do it. But then at the end, because we want this to be family centric, that's really a major goal for us. So if you've got a 2 to 9-year-old, we want you to be able to do these lessons. And so to help guide that, we also include write-ups that explain how you might scale up or scale down the complexity
Mhm.
to meet a toddler, primary age child, or an elementary age
Yeah,
child.
so we've got tips for your toddler, tips for your primary age child, 2 to 6,
Yeah.
tips for your elementary age child, so that if you, like Valeria, has an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, or I don't know how long ago she did this interview with us. She might have a 9-year-old and a 5-year-old now.
Mhm.
Then there's like a very pretty great range. So if you've got a baby at home, you can include your baby. If you've got a toddler, you can include your toddler.
Exactly.
Yeah. So it really is a program that grows with the child.
Yeah, totally. And, if you are interested, if any of this sounds exciting, and we hope it does, now is actually a great time to think about joining. We're going to be starting our fall classes for our foundation courses. So that's our primary, which is for parents with kids who are 2 to 6. And then we have our foundation course for lower elementary, which is ages 6 to 9, parents of kids who are 6 to 9. These things are filled. There's hundreds of lessons. There's 1,700 lessons in the lower L. There's almost 1,000 in the primary, plus hours of video that show you how to do the different lessons, plus the community and the coaching that Aubrey was just talking about. And we're going to be kicking off in August the live component for both programs, but you get lifetime access to all of the printable materials and all the videos. So join now. You could start to get ahead and then be ready for the class.
There are actually a lot of parents that are doing that right now. They're joining over the summer because they're thinking about next year's academic year. Maybe I don't know, maybe like them, their summer's full of a lot of vacations and stuff. But they want to make sure that they're prepared for the academic year.
That's right.
Comes time to actually homeschool in the fall,
That's
usually
right.
in September for.
Yeah, that's right. And she was also a member of Constellation, and that's ongoing. But this is Dive, which is the theme we just launched in June. We have Erupt coming up, going to launch later this week.
Yes,
it's got a lot of fun activities on volcanoes. So we're doing the Ring of Fire and identifying where it is and the volcanoes, some of the major volcanoes. We have a 4-part card set on volcanoes from every continent. We have a lava soup recipe,
an original lava soup
a geometry
recipe,
making conical shapes. So there's some really fun stuff that's
so fun.
That's going to come out real soon. And if you join soon, you'll be able to join us for our annual planning party, which we do in the summer. And that is a time for us to help sort of guide through planning out a year of homeschooling with you. And it's highly interactive. We're basically there. It's in our private coaching session, and we work together, and then we check in every 3 months. It's also going to be when we hand out our very popular linear calendar for 23, 2024.
Yes. So we were shocked how popular that was.
Anyway, so if you don't want to miss the planning party, or if you'd love to be part of any of the foundation courses, head over to our website, childoftheredwoods.com. You get all the details, or send us an email. We're happy to talk about it.
Yeah. All right. Well, Valeria's journey, I know, will resonate with so many people. So her journey as an unschooler began when her first child was born. That's how she sees her unschooling journey as beginning. She writes, "When he was born, I lost my job, and it was the best thing that could have happened to me." She said it was at the beginning, it was hard to accept that I was just a mother. And she put just in quotes, of course. She said that I had done 4 jobs to support myself and that I worked an average of 12 hours a day. That's a lot outside of the home.
Yeah, right.
She said it took me years to feel proud of the way that I lived my life and of my work to make our life and those around us rewarding and fulfilling. Well, first of all, I love that she considers the very beginning of their homeschool journey the very beginning of her child's life. Like right at the beginning, when she's got a baby, the birth of her child is where the education starts. And that just could not be more Montessori.
Totally. I mean, we would say it probably even begins even earlier.
Even earlier, I know.
Of course, they don't just appear.
I know.
The stork doesn't drop them
right.
off, but to see that as a continual part of life, the life journey, and that significant, perhaps most significant stage of the actual birth, as the start of the next phase of the parenting and educational journey. I love that, because I think a lot of times we do say, like, okay, they go to school at they're going to go to preschool. Maybe they're 3 or 4, or maybe they go to kindergarten, or they're 5 or 6. Like that's when we think school starts, but that's not actually how it works, right? The child is always learning, and that's what Maria teaches us. They're going through these many stages of development,
Yeah.
and their minds are just this incredibly absorbent sponge-like thing, and it doesn't have a calendar-based starting point. It's when the senses are opened, the learning begins.
That's right. And they don't stop until we die, right?
Yeah.
Like lifelong learning, it just continues on and on and
Yeah, we
on.
can't help it.
And Maria Montessori was actually unique in that she saw education as this lifelong journey. She didn't really see it as having you start at age 6 with school and you end when you're out of college. She really saw it as like, these are the learning opportunities that are available to these different stages of life.
That's right.
And of course, we definitely can influence the stage of life that is in the womb. But certainly when your child is born, or whenever you maybe adopt a child and receive a child, that can be when your journey begins,
Totally.
really,
Yeah.
as the educator in a more direct way. Right.
That's right.
So, what is really actually very cool is we know that lots of brain growth happens during this time of birth, around the birth of a child. There's a lot happening in adults. They actually have done some really well-documented studies on this. A lot of people, we already kind of assume that maybe the mother will be having some kind of transformation, right? Because it's physical and you can see it.
Sure.
But actually, both parents do have a transformation. There is a lot of brain growth that happens. There was one study that said that the results showed that having children, and sometime during pregnancy, like the father becoming aware of the mother's developing, extending belly, like the preparation for the baby, that actually starts some rewiring of the brain already. And they said that in current studies that most of the brain changes are pretty dramatic. They're actually more dramatic for the mothers than for fathers, as far as what we can observe. But the people who are studying this, they suspect that this might be kind of skewed in the study, because they notice that fathers who are primary caregivers or who do stay at home or like super more active, they are having bigger brain changes.
Yeah.
So it's
that's fascinating.
Yeah. So these brain changes are actually happening because of the interactivity within, the process of parenting. So what that really means to us, and Montessori, she did not have the ability, or the privilege to raise her child herself, because her baby wasn't with her when she was, having her career. And that was her choice. But she did deeply respect the relationship between parents and children and really was curious about it. And I think if she were alive today, she would be blown away that adults are having this measurable brain growth, and that this brain growth occurs not just because you had a baby, not just like a biological thing, but because you are interacting with an infant. Like the more investment you have in the parenting, the more brain changes and hormone changes you're going to find in the body. Isn't it interesting? Yeah. So, so we don't really know why it happens. We presume it happens because babies need that interaction,
It's almost as though our bodies know that the family is the core structure of society.
Yeah. Well, and regardless of like why it happens, it is an opportunity. Just knowing that it is happening, that is an opportunity for some kind of transformation to happen. And I love how Valeria discussed this vision of herself as like, I am a person who works 12 hours a day. I am a person who works hard outside of the home.
And proud of her work ethic.
An educated person who works very hard, right? And then when she started staying at home and attending to her infant, she had a great sense of loss. Where is her identity now that person who works 12 hours a day outside of the home is gone? what is left or what is replacing it.
That's right.
So there was a real shift here. And, fortunately for Valeria and for her children, she leaned in. She didn't say, what, this is this great loss and I'll just be depressed about it, until I can get back to work and get a new job. Yep. She was like, this could be an opportunity for our family. I can find inspiration in this moment and I can grow myself, and I can learn a different kind of education for myself that is a different identity than the one I had previously adopted.
Yeah, and I underscore there that it's incredibly brave to do, right?
It is.
And to be super clear, it's that other reaction, the feeling of depression or so forth, it's also normal and biologically driven.
Absolutely.
And can be really based on your personality and the sort of the way your brain chemistry works and everything else. So it's if you've struggled to make that connection and you hear the story, don't think like, well, I guess I made a big mistake. It's hard. It's very, very, very hard, but it's that's why it's worth celebrating, because it's like hard and brave.
Yes. And also
it shows that we can do
also requires support,
That's
so
right.
We can talk about support from maybe extended family, support from maybe medical doctors, to help through that depression, or psychologists,
and an understanding society that, as we'll talk about in a minute, that respects the parenting journey.
Also in this study, that study was actually done in Spain. And so they were taking a look, and the researchers noted that the parents actually had more paternity leave in Spain than they would in America. Right. Yeah. So they were thinking like this actually could indicate like this could correlate to the kind of brain growth they were seeing in fathers that might be different from other situations. So
implications are pretty
so support
amazing.
Obviously is necessary, and there are different levels of privilege that people have to be able to take this journey, right?
But it's an example of what is possible. It's so inspiring, right?
It is. So Valeria continues. She says, and this is about her life, is seeing herself in her new identity. She says that their family loves to travel. They love to be in company. They love, and she says, growing up with my children, I discovered many qualities of myself I never imagined that I had: curiosity, resourcefulness, a taste for adventure, a love for slow rhythms, and unconditional love. Oh no, she's like filling me up with all the good, warm feelings. She says, I still have doubts and fears about the choice to raise them against the tide, especially when the days are tiring. But I am learning to live one day at a time with small weekly goals and recharge by looking for support in people like me who have embarked on this journey, even if only virtually. Oh, so wonderful.
It is. I love hearing this, just as we talked about. I mean, it's a really difficult transformation. I had not exactly identical. I mean, I'm not, but
you're not a mother.
I'm not a mother. That's right. I didn't carry a baby to term, but I am a father, and I was also really career-driven, workaholic, long hours, and lost my job and was in a position. And I would say, at the time when it happened, I was like, woe is me. And through good fortune and hard work, we were able to sort of work it out. And now I can look back and say, it really was great, because it's allowed me to really pursue things that are meaningful to me with my, with the kids and the work that we're doing here. So sometimes that's the lemonade, sort of like turning lemons into lemonade. And it is a mindset. It is hard and it can be difficult to work through, but if you can give it time and space, then I think you'll find it. I think the other thing that's interesting in here is in her language about parenting, how, I think we just perceive parenting not in the best light. We have respect for parenting. We just had Father's Day this past Sunday here in the U.S. And yes, we love mom and dad and all that stuff, mom, dad, apple pie. But I think, I was thinking about what is the stereotype? The stereotype of the family man, the boring, steady, maybe they're
Oh, there's so many
spoofy.
stereotypes that I saw just in the advertisements, right? Like, dad loves to grill
He's
burgers.
grilling burgers. He's taking a nap on the
Dad likes to
couch.
mow the lawn. Dad's like,
Exactly. They make corny jokes, and you know what? All those things are true, but what
they
I
can be for
they
particular
they
man.
can be. That's right. They're not true for everybody, but they're not untrue. The thing that's interesting is that there are, I would say, those are virtues like hard work and
Mhm.
being steady and loving and so forth. But we kind of pronounce them with a kind of an irony or sort of a winkingness. And that's really too bad because parenting is so very, very hard and so important. I mean,
Mhm.
sustaining human civilization is not for the faint of heart. It takes dedicated parents to make the world continue on in a healthy way. As Maria would point that out too,
Yep.
right? So it's just curious why we devalue it. Even those of us, you know, like in Valeria's terms, or I might have put it in these terms, or you hear it in advertising, or we say it in the voice in our
Mhm.
head. Like we just often diminish parenting.
Yep.
And I don't know why. I'm wondering, you know, it's probably in some part it's about, you know, women's work and the devaluing of women's work or feminine roles that we have traditionally in the West, or equating money and value. So if you work hard and you make money, even if you're not a millionaire, but you're bringing home the bacon, so to
Yeah,
speak,
and that is
then
a big problem for stay-at-home parents who don't
totally.
earn income, right?
That's right. So we say, well,
Yeah,
then you have value because we
that's
equate your
right.
value with your, you know, financial productivity, your money. There's also, I think, something about how parenting is this very long-term investment that pays off very, very slowly. So even though the child, you know, we talk about a baby comes out in those first few years, they're going to change so rapidly. You know, imagine from a child who's basically in the fourth trimester, as we sometimes talk about the just newborn,
Yep.
to, you know, a couple years later, they're running around, they're talking, they're feeding themselves, a toddler or beyond, or even going into school and learning to read and so forth. That's amazing, right? But the actual journey to adulthood is very, very slow, and you
Mhm.
don't see necessarily the results in real time. And I think that we have sort of an expectation of immediate gratification. And so I think there's some, you know, now I think modernity has created an expectation that you get immediate gratification. And parenting is never about immediate gratification. It's about long term. And so I was thinking in Valeria's case when she said at first she struggled with it, but then over time, you know, it took time to sort of change the mindset and it took time to start to see the benefits come through. And I don't know. There's just something going on. For whatever reason, you know, I don't know what it is. That it's definitely a thing. I mean, we're seeing falling birth rates all over the post-industrialized world,
Yep.
and the U.S. is no different in this case. Um, what do you think? What do you think this is? Why do you think people? Where do you think that comes from? It just seems so like when you talk about parenthood, it either feels like it's either like meant to be coded language or it's it's cheesy or something.
Yeah, I don't know. It's almost as though we think it's easy, but
Right.
we know it's not. There's so many parenting books out there.
No, it's super hard.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Yeah. So I don't know, kind of just pondering here, but I was really struck by her language because it made me
Yeah.
think about, you know, we even do this to ourselves. We even use this language to ourselves, and we're in the middle of it. You know,
Hmm.
we parents, we as parents. So yeah, challenge again. One of those points that, like, if you were to start small, is if you hear that voice in your head that says, you know, was this really paying off, or I can't get anything right, or man, those kids they didn't pick up their room or whatever. Remember, parenting is a very, very slow and long term process. You are literally building the people who will sustain human civilization. It is not for the faint of heart.
That's
Stick
right.
with it. You can do it. And that could be the beginning of a transformation in mindset.
Yeah. Well, I would say that seeing herself as an unschooler was also a pivotal thing for Valeria.
Right. That would make
Yes. And
sense.
so I want to talk about unschooling a little bit and how unschooling and Montessori work together.
Okay.
So let's kind of get into that a little bit and talk about how that actually works. Because in from thinking about Valerie's big transformation, how they're a family who loves to travel, they love to explore. Obviously, they like to be outside. And also, I would assume, do all the normal Montessori practical life type of stuff that you do in the kitchen, cooking in the kitchen. And
In her
all
write-up, she
that.
talks about cooking is an important part of their family ritual.
She does. And so when you kind of think about that lifestyle, you really are describing an unschooling lifestyle. What I love about unschooling is, well, what really gives me like that catch in my gut about the word unschooling is the word right?
Yes, right.
Like, so it's not called not schooling. It's not called,
free schooling. Although I think that is a thing, right?
Right. And it's not called homeschooling, although it was born from homeschooling. It's like you're homeschooling, but you've got this little prefix of right? And what does that mean? So does that mean like we're just ditching the concept of school at all?
Totally. And which then leads into a really, like a real semantic sort of exploration of what does school mean?
Yeah.
And what is the difference between school and learning and education? Because there are three things that we conflate together that mean very, very different things. And yeah, so we're unschooling, but we're not unlearning, as in not learning.
Right.
And we're not uneducating,
right,
like as in undoing education or
right,
opposing education.
Well, so in Montessori, we tend to think of the word school, as not just a place, away from home to learn. We tend to think of like school as a place where education happens, right? And so for me, the thought of like doing away with the concept of a place where education can happen, whether that place is at home or whether that place is in another building, that kind of makes me feel a little uptight already.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I think it's meant to be
but that is the point.
Right?
Exactly. It is meant to disrupt. Right. So you want to talk a little bit about the history of unschooling?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back. So the idea itself is generally attributed to John Holt, who was he was a primary school teacher. I think he taught private school in I think it was in the Northeast, and really wanted to disrupt or change, reform, improve education. He thought the system wasn't working. That it as we still see today, right? And this was in the 60s. And so he, as I understand it, he began working on the inside to try and reform, and then it didn't work out. And so then he leaves the system. And over time, he becomes more convinced that reform and transformation has to happen outward in. And he's considered one of the creators of the homeschool movement that emerged in the 70s. He eventually writes a book called Teach Your Own, and I think it was 81. It's kind of considered the foundational text to the movement.
It is.
And homeschooling, which he was thinking about in the 70s, eventually leads to unschooling around the same time. So it's a movement that is born of the idea that the school as a thing, as a place you go to within a confined amount of time, bells and so forth, isn't working for kids. And so we need to transform school. And so we're going to unschool school. And, homeschooling in general was very niche for a long, long time. Over the last 10 or 15 years, it's really started to grow. It's about 3 million or plus families or here in the US homeschool. So it's quite a large number comparatively, and it's becoming more large and diverse as people are sort of looking at what's happening in education and saying, am I providing the best opportunity for my child, or they're having a personal transformation, maybe for one reason or the other. Some number of folks went through it during the pandemic, where the whole world was turned upside down for many. And it was a pause to think like, well, what is important in my life, and what do I want to do, and how can I fit in all the different aspirations I have? And unschooling and other forms of homeschooling became they rose to the top again, and people started talking about it. Now, it has a bit of a strange reputation, I think, because it is born of protest in a way, or a reform. And I think that kind of gives it a certain aggressiveness,
It does.
which is part of the point.
And very dedicated followers as well.
That's right. Yeah. But in terms of sort of, I think if we think more broadly what unschooling is about, it's like, I would say it's unschooling school.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Like I'm going to take education, I'm going to reclaim learning and education from a building and put it back in on the student or the child or the adult directly.
Right. I was thinking about, attaching the prefix "un" to other things. I was thinking, like, what if I were to take another random word, like a taco, right? You love to eat tacos, right? What if I were to say, well, what would you say if I were to give you an un-taco?
Well, there was a really
What would
famous,
you
do you
think of
remember the
that?
famous ad
Is there an
campaign?
un-taco?
No, but there was an
Oh.
Uncola. Do you remember the
Oh, that's
Uncola?
right, an uncola.
7-Up was the
Yeah,
Uncola.
that's
For those of you who are
right.
old enough to remember, it was a campaign back in
Yeah.
the 80s.
So what is it? Is it completely not a cola? It's still a cola, right?
It's the Uncola.
It's
So you're like, it's like a cola, but it's not your grandma's cola. or something.
right. Right. So yeah, it's a taco,
It's cheeky, right?
but it's not a taco.
Yeah,
It's
what is it?
like maybe instead of like corn, I'm using flour, or I don't know. Maybe I changed the shape to a triangle.
I don't know.
Or something.
Or it's like all the ingredients are laid out and you do it yourself.
Right.
Like this is your
a
untaco.
deconstructed salad, right?
Right,
It's
exactly.
Untaco, right?
So it has this kind of edge. It's
Yes, I mean, but that's what we're doing. That really is what the word is doing with unschooling, now that I think about it.
Yeah.
So we take the concept of school and we're just going to like kind of deconstruct it and say, you know what, we don't need school anymore because it's too rigid and it's, it's not really that great.
It's not student oriented.
Right.
It's not getting
child centric. It's not.
It fails too many of our,
It doesn't allow
kids.
children to express their curiosity. And so, you know what? We don't need it anymore. No school. Right. And there's actually a quote by him that I thought really demonstrated that. So it's this. So he says in the book, Teach Your Own, quote, I have used the words homeschooling, and that's in quotes, to describe the process by which children grow and learn in the world without going very much to schools, because those words are familiar and quickly understood. But in one very important sense, they are misleading. What is most important and valuable about the home as a base for children's growth in the world is not that it is a better school than the schools, but that it isn't a school at all, right? So he's really wanting us to redefine what a school should be. Like saying, kick that word has just been with us so long, kick it to the curb. We're still going to be educating our children. We can still use the word homeschooling because people understand it.
That's right.
But we don't need that antiquated concept of taking children to a building and making them study for tests and be graded on their subjects. Like that concept of school is out.
Schooling, like it begins when this bell starts and it ends when this bell starts, and then you go home and you have homework, which is like you took some part of the school with you. That's not how learning really works.
That is not. And Maria Montessori actually agrees 100% with him. She said,
I think it's the other way since he was the second, but
he agreed with her. Right. I know. Much later, John Holt agrees with Maria Montessori. She said in The Absorbent Mind, in one of the very first chapters, she says, supposing I said there was a planet without schools or teachers, where study was unknown, and yet the inhabitants, doing nothing but living and walking about, came to know all things, to carry in their minds the whole of learning. Would you not think I was romancing, right? Like she had this big dream, same dream John Holt had many years later. And it's essentially saying like, we actually don't need schools at all.
And it's so to underscore this, like Maria Montessori is not anti-education.
Nope.
In any way.
Nope.
As far as I know.
And she was a proponent of schools. Right?
And she built curriculum and materials. And
She wanted her method to be used in the existing schools. And she wanted to create new ones that were using this method that gave children a freer way of exploring the world.
Yeah, in a way, it's like saying that school is so important to our society and to our well-being. We want everyone to be fully and truly educated, that it's so important. We have to challenge ourselves in the most fundamental ways, what that looks like.
Yeah.
It's too important Schooling is too important to leave to schools.
That's right.
So, I mean, again, it's transgressive. And
Yeah, and she also didn't like the word teacher either.
no, she
Maria
called them guides.
Montessori.
And
Yeah, John Holt, he was like, why don't we need teachers? Like parents can do this job at home, right? And Maria Montessori was like, we don't even need this concept called a teacher.
Yeah.
These are going to be guides, to the children instead. So, unteaching.
Yeah. So again, this is all very transgressive language, and it can feel like you're creating a battle between, and I think even some folks in the community can like put on their armor, like I'm doing battle against curriculum, or I'm doing battle against rigidity or something, or vice versa, like I'm doing battle against the homeschoolers or something. And that's I've never found those sorts of conversations to be particularly healthy or useful. I mean, I think they can help at the edges to sort of ignite in the same way that the word unschool can ignite. Right. But at the end of the day, if your vision is to create a society where all children can be educated and achieve their fullest potential, then we are all singing from the same hymnal, just from different parts of it.
Yes.
And we need to kind of figure out how to get together.
And homeschooling is so widely misunderstood. I've always been of the mind that homeschoolers, whether you're Waldorf homeschooling or unschooling or Montessori schooling, however you choose to educate your child at home, or using textbooks as resources, however you're choosing to do it, or a mix of all of those or others, we're all educating our children at home.
Yeah, I mean,
we're all on
as
the same team.
Valeria realized as soon as here's her baby, and now she's a teacher.
Yep, that's right. That's right. So let's talk about some of the similarities and differences between Montessori and unschooling, so we can kind of parse it out, and kind of those of you who are new to unschooling or Montessori, you can kind of get a little bit of the lay of the land. So in Montessori, we have a phrase called follow the child. And even though this is not the core phrase of unschoolers, they definitely adopt this mentality. Unschoolers and Montessorians, we both want to observe what our children are interested in, talk to them about it, have discourse about it, and then support them in that journey. So if your child is interested in stars, you would notice it, and then you would maybe help provide them some resources for it. And that might include going to the library and checking out some books on the solar system and on stars.
Getting some binoculars to go stargaze.
Getting some binoculars, taking your child to an observatory. There's a million things you can do, especially as homeschoolers, that are available to you that may not even be available to teachers at school. So that is a follow a child is definitely something that we both are 100% on board
because
with.
That's also what unschooling would say. It would say, look at what the child is gravitating toward and feed that.
Yeah. It's exactly the same approach. But unlike with Montessori, in unschooling, there are no prescribed lessons or materials or curriculum, and you can take this, so you can think about the difference between a radical unschooler, who would be like the extreme version of unschooling, versus the extreme purist version of Montessori.
Now, these folks are going to be
both are on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? So if you're a purist Montessori, parent or teacher, really parent, you're probably thinking, I have to make my whole home look exactly like a classroom, and I've got to have every single material, and I've got to know exactly the right way to present every single of the thousands of lessons in the Montessori curriculum. And you'll be very, very centered, and then you can get really into the details of like, well, this lesson comes before this lesson, and they can't have this until they have this. And, that's a very prescribed way of teaching. And Maria Montessori actually didn't do that.
That's right.
That's like too structured for a genuine Montessori approach. Same with unschooling. With an unschool approach, you can say all curriculum is evil, and all there can be no lessons given to children. The children have to be the ones to do all of their learning on their own. And I think that approach can it can lead you down some ruts, So what if your child just doesn't seem to be interested in anything? If there's no support there for the child, if there's no real guidelines and boundaries and interesting interesting information put forth, by a collaborating adult, then sometimes the education can get kind of stagnant,
Totally. It's like, how would you know if
or
you
your
like spaghetti
child.
if you've never been served a dish of spaghetti?
Yes.
Like,
Or sometimes, in those situations, children may end up just playing the same video games all day, and that's
sure.
it. So that would be like an extreme example of both sides, right?
Right.
Which we don't believe in
No,
or
not at
teach.
all.
We
I
believe.
mean, yeah, because Maria, because we follow what Maria teaches, which is that children go through periods of readiness,
Yeah,
and and other research has borne out that there's readiness periods for learning language, for learning math, for reading, and that really taking advantage of those is ideal. And that will mean that you'll have to have some kind of curriculum or scope and
that's
sequence.
right.
You don't have to follow it like you were saying, like check,
Regimented,
yeah,
right?
the really
Yeah.
regimented check, but you got to have some. We would argue you need some sense.
Yeah,
of
it's
the flow.
some support to know. There are certain lessons that Maria Montessori and all of the successive guides who have followed her have noticed that children tend to gravitate to at different ages. And so, can you take an unschooling approach and still take a Montessori approach and give these lessons? Sure. But it's actually helpful if you are aware ahead of time of what some of these stages are and what some of these more appealing, enticing lessons would be.
Yeah, no, it's
make
just
things kind of more lively and fun.
that's right. So that's the idea. Also, this prepared environment. So it reminds me. Remember, we went to the sushi restaurant was it last year, and we had all kinds of exploratory experiences,
Yes, we did.
including jellyfish and so forth. And some of it we loved, and some of it we didn't. But you don't know unless you try, and that's kind of the principle here. Like if you're
not speaking Japanese, we were just like randomly picking things off the menu.
It's a lovely little local restaurant. Like a mom and pop like place, really, really nice, fun, and some of that food we loved, and some of it were like, I wish I had a tuna roll. So, but you won't know.
Where's my California roll?
And so that's the idea with your child. Like that's why you would, why we would say having a sense of the curriculum and the subject areas and presenting to the child according to their levels of their readiness and the stages of development, things that might be engaging is like presenting them the chance to taste jellyfish.
Right.
Like they may hate it, they may love it, but it's an opportunity for them to find out on their own.
That's right.
And not to force them to eat it. Like that is where we would say this is the line. Like that sort of that regimented forcing is where things go off.
That's right. So something that we both share is that we put a lot of trust in the child.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe we differ because in Montessori, we have specific lessons that we use, different ways we teach different things. I just wrote up a lesson on teaching your child about the parts of a cone, the geometrical solid shape.
Yeah, for the erupt.
For the volcano unit. So this is going to be a fun one. And as I was writing it, I was thinking, I was listing out all the steps, the way to present it. And there is a very kind of specific way to present vocabulary terms in Montessori. And this is based on research about, what the way that children can absorb vocabulary most easily and quickly. But it's not to say that you can't take a relaxed approach as well. And if your child picks up a cone, happens to see something and asks what shape it is, I feel like the benefit, obviously as an unschooler, you would still say like, oh, that's the shape of a cone, right? You've seen ice cream cones before and you can talk about that, right?
What do you want to call it?
Right. But in Montessori, we would kind of know that these concepts are coming up. And if we've studied the curriculum, we would be ready. We'd be like, ooh, yes, this is a cone. And, let's go look for other cones. And I kind of know already how to give the 3-period lesson. And I might just give that on the spot if my child seems open to it.
So this is another area where they are conducive to one another. So because they're both about following the child.
That's right.
And just in one case, we might emphasize the adult's preparation.
Right. That's exactly right. Yeah. But trusting that the child will get to where they need to be, is either as an unschooler or as a Montessorian, we're not going to fret over the fact that our child isn't able to identify every single geometrical solid.
Because it's not a checklist that we're running through. And this is where, folks in the unschooling community or in the Montessori or a lot of times in the homeschool community itself sort of this is a key reason why they might choose that. It's
That's right.
that in a traditional school, for all kinds of reasons, it does tend to take a kind of a checklist approach.
Mhm.
And you might have a test. You often have a test at the end to sort of identify how much knowledge they gathered and then standardize that across the whole of a large geographic region. And so it lends itself, in fact, it requires a kind of a checklist approach, which isn't necessarily what you would want, isn't necessarily how children or even adults best learn.
That's right. So, we see ourselves in both. We see ourselves as guides rather than as teachers, collaborators rather than instructors. Our kids have the freedom to choose whatever activities they want. So, in unschooling, your child has free choice. In Montessori, your child also has free choice. Montessori, you're preparing the environment as you mentioned. Like, we take that role on. It's like we're going to prepare the environment. But in unschooling, most unschoolers that I have met, they do prepare their environment. They just use different language for it. So they might talk about strewing, is a way to prepare their environment without thinking of it as a Montessori thing.
Meaning like to sow the environment with lots of different things.
Exactly. Yeah. So
about.
you kind of strew about some interesting things and then let your child have at it and see what they do. So that's something really popular. Both Montessori homeschoolers and unschoolers believe that you should take your child out into the environment as often as possible. The integration of nature or outdoor activities are just as educational as anything that you might do in the home. And both take a heavy, I think that both take a lot of heavy involvement on the part of the parent, so whether you're choosing to unschool to Montessori or to Montessori unschool, you are going to be involved in your child's life. You can't just like take a hands-off approach and say, oh, child, go learn on your own, because that's what children do. And I'll see you in 18 years.
Yeah.
You have to be active, so
yes.
Children need the support and guidance of the adults around them and other children around them too.
This is going back to the Valeria point about she reoriented her life through a process, a very difficult process, but she did it. And because if you really want to provide an unschooling Montessori blend approach, like I said, you've got to be there.
Yes, you do.
Your life has to be around. You
have to be not over involved. You cannot micromanage your child.
Well, and also you can't give up yourself so completely that you burn out, that you don't leave time for yourself.
Right.
Which is also a challenge for sometimes parents. They get so invested that they're either micromanaging or a combination of micromanaging and burning themselves out.
I know. And so it's really hard. It's like there's so much that feels like a conflict here, isn't there? I'm saying like, be involved, but give your child a lot of freedom and trust your child, but also give them lessons and be aware of their development, but don't over influence them, because they need to find their own path and be themselves, so it's not an easy thing.
No, totally.
So I often find myself like trying to walk the line between good boundaries and good lessons, and too many boundaries and too lessons, giving the children a little bit more freedom to choose. And then saying, you know what, things aren't working so well, or they're fighting a lot, and like, all right, they need a little more structure. We'll kind of get a little more structured again, and kind of go back and forth between those two often.
Yeah, and I guess it isn't, but if you come to that moment and you're looking yourself in the mirror and you say, what am I doing? Am I doing this right? It almost, as in so much else, it comes down to your intent.
Yep.
It's what you intend to do. That's, what is your purpose for doing this? And I think if you come with that mindset, then you'll find the right way to pick a balance and not be so extreme one way or the other. And, because you'll say that what is best for the child is sometimes they need more handholding and sometimes they need more freedom. And sometimes you need to prepare the environment a certain way, and sometimes you need to let them prepare it themselves. But if you have that mindset, the right intent, then things will go okay, I think.
That's right. I'm going to pause right here. I know we've got a lot of people watching right now. If you have any questions about unschooling, this would be a great time to ask.
Yep.
We are here for you live. That's why we are doing these live. So pop that in the chat. While you're doing that, if you have a question, I will say that we do tend to identify ourselves as Montessori unschoolers.
Yeah,
We both love curriculum,
of
but
course. I mean,
like
we write it for a living.
curriculum is awesome,
Yeah.
because it gives you support. It gives you inspiration, but it should not be the thing that you only use to teach your
Yeah,
child.
the goal is, so even with something like constellation, right? So the book here on our packet on die, which has the 10 lessons, and the goal isn't to march through the 10 lessons. If your child gets really hooked on one, do it over and over.
Yeah.
If it doesn't resonate, pick a different theme.
Yeah, I often tell parents actually like just do these activities in front of their child, just model them.
Yeah.
As though you were the one who is so fascinated about whales, you really wanted to do all of these experiments and crafty activities. And your child will learn so much by you engaging with the course material, even if they're not doing it in a hands-on way themselves.
And that's true whether you're using this kind of curriculum, constellation, or something else. That is the general rule. That's the idea why the journey you take with your children. It's when you're invested, interested in demonstrating that kind of engagement, it becomes infectious. You're modeling for the child what you want from them, and they then can process that, and they will 9 times out of 10, I think, come back in surprising ways to show you what they're capable of.
That's right, they do. So, you don't how do you be a Montessori unschooler? You need to understand the Montessori method.
Yep.
So, if you don't take one of our foundation courses, definitely take something or go do some research.
Yep.
Read some books by Maria Montessori.
Yep.
The Absorbent Mind is a great one. The Secret of Childhood is another great one.
Yep.
Really infuse yourself with the Montessori mindset,
Yep.
And how you will approach this education.
Yep.
And you don't just know that you don't have to have all of the materials. You don't
No.
have to have all of the shelves. You don't have to give all of the lessons in any kind of order. You don't have to know all of the presentations for all of the different lessons. But if you adopt that mindset of being with your child in a very natural way, and sharing the magic of the world with them, you are already on your path to being a Montessori homeschooler.
Absolutely.
And to integrate in that unschoolingness, all you have to do is relax, chill out a little bit, go to the park more often, go outside, explore your world, and try not to just be so uptight about getting the homeschooling done. I get emails all the time from parents all around the world. And it seems like when their children turn about 5, that kindergarten age, they start getting really frantic and kind of panicky about it. Like, now we're really going to have to homeschool. And, they're kind of anticipating it's going to be hard. And how am I going to do this? And this is just to say, like, children learn all the time. So just because your child was 4 doesn't mean they weren't really schooling, at that age.
That's
or even
right.
age 2, or even as a newborn. Like, they've been learning the whole time. And just the education process just continues for the rest of life. So you really can just chill out and let things happen, take it easy, do some Montessori activities, have fun with it. And then you're on your path to Montessori unschooling.
Whether you like it or not, your child is always learning. So.
That's right.
Mindfulness, right? Mindfulness.
That's right. All
well,
right.
I think we've got to break for the day.
Yeah, so let's wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Valeria, for sharing so much about your family. If her story inspires you, friends, and you want to learn more about a Montessori lifestyle, we have programs and resources for parents that can help. You can head to our website, childoftheredwoods.com, to find out more.
Yeah. Big thanks to everyone who's joining us. If you have questions, comments, feedback, anything like that, you can reach us at hello@childoftheredwoods.com. You can also get us through Instagram. You can leave a comment here on the video or whatever. And we always love hearing your thoughts. And if you want to listen to this or any of our past episodes as a podcast, you can get that on our website as well, or through Apple iTunes or whatever.
Spotify
or whatever you like. That's right. So
we'll be back next Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific with another installment of the Montessori Essentials.
You know what this one is?
I never know.
Nonfiction books.
Ooh, so we'll talk about your home library.
And how you use nonfiction books to kickstart thematic learning.
All right. Fun, fun. See you there, friends.